Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa College and welcome to Culture by Neurodesign. Now in today's episode, I'm joined by Tjerk Feitsma, who is the director of the Neurodiversity Foundation. I'll ask Tjerk to introduce himself in a moment, but first I'll share that Tjerk and I are here in support of Podcasthon. So Podcasthon is an event that happens every year, and its objective is to share a wave of inspiring audio content to raise awareness about charities. It's a growing initiative. It started in France just 2 years ago, and this year is the first time that it's going international. More than 1,000 podcast hosts are busy talking with representatives of organizations that they support, and are releasing all these episodes in a coordinated one-week effort in mid-March. So that having been said, I'm delighted to welcome Tjerk and to kick off this episode to showcase Stichting Neurodiversiteit, or for those who don't speak Dutch, the Neurodiversity Foundation. So let's start by learning more about it. Tjerk, what inspired you to take the step to start the Neurodiversity Foundation?
Well, thank you for the question, and also thank you for hosting me today.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. And I think it all started when in 2016, I'm a sociologist by nature. So I'm trained to understand the power of words and how they influence social movements and change in society as well. And I got diagnosed at a very late stage in life, about 33, 34. And as a true sociologist, I started diving into all the books to get all the statistics right, to understand them more neatly to the group that I found that I identify with too. I'm autistic myself. And I found the most horrible statistics and things that made me, emotionally a little bit sad too. If you look at, like the suicide rates, the loneliness rates, the unemployment rates, the level of discrimination, it's just really tough for that group. So that made me very enthusiastic to use my powers for the good of the world, but also to see if we could make a change with that, because opinions of societies, they do change, and it happens because people enact on that. So I started to have the idea to create something new, something that didn't exist in my nation before, and that was a foundation that was focused on neurodiversity. The concept of neurodiversity was not used at all in the Netherlands in 2016. If you look at all the Google search trends and stuff like this, you literally see nobody using it.
Yeah.
And I understood then that the power of this word and the power of this concept and the paradigm beneath it, that changes people when they get to understand what it means, that the power of understanding a word really changes the mindset of a person, that it's likely to make them more gentle, more curious, more kind, more interested towards each other, and also moving away from this old idea that we have that, the person that we are ourselves are the most normal ones and everybody else could be a not normal one. So I decided to hatch a very large plan. And the plan had 3 important components to it. And a couple of years later, we added an educational component to that. But the first mission that we had for the Neurodiversity Foundation was to set up an organization that could introduce this concept into society to help people understand what it means, but also what it really means and what it means for us people and what it means for the work that we have to do individually in our own mindsets and looking at other people, because it's not just for one group, it's for all of us. And we started with doing lots of workshops and sessions and presentations, and also letting all the big players in my country know that this was the new way of thinking, and we wanted to get them on board with this new approach to looking at people with neurological differentness. And it took a long time, but I'm very happy to see how that got, and that all the major players in the Netherlands are now much more neurodiversity affirming than they ever were before, and also starting up projects for neurodivergent people. And nothing like this was of a kind when we started. So when we noticed how well this worked in the Netherlands, we decided to broaden our scope and to say, hey, this world is big and there's many good people, and they deserve to live in a society that treats them better. So then we also decided to do it internationally. In many countries around the world, wherever people would ask, we would say yes. And by simply saying yes every single time, our message of it's okay to be different and there's a value in that, it got to be spread in so much areas around the world and has inspired so many to start up their own organizations or their own projects. So this was the first mission of the Neurodiversity Foundation, to introduce the concept.
Fantastic.
And also to have people use the word neurodivergent more often and understand what that means, because it's not a medical diagnosis, but it's a social opt-in label for those who identify with it. And unifying those people who do, it gives strength, it gives solidarity, but it also gives the willingness to help each other. And together as a neurodivergent force, we're so much stronger than individually trying to do what needs to be done. The second part of starting the Neurodiversity Foundation was a little bit more personal. I'm autistic, so I've had problems with communication during my lifetime as well. And all it takes is for my brain to drop in capacity with 60% is just to put on background music and have a conversation in the corner of the room. At that moment in time, my mind cannot process information as well as it did in other times. And I noticed that so many of my autistic brothers and sisters and siblings, that they have similar issues with being unable to verbalize these, using this higher cognitive function in our brain of converting the images and sounds and the feelings that we have in our mind to words that can be understood by the other. Because for us, often communication works in a slightly different way, and we're constantly translating our inner mind to the outer world, and this costs a lot of energy. So we've started to think of a way to solve it. How can we solve this communication problem? Not just creating awareness, because then people know, but they don't act upon it, but to create a mainstream solution that could actually have a dent in the problem, that could actually undermine that problem with a couple of percent, which seems small, but it's big because it's hundreds of thousands of people. And then to create a project where we could serve the 10 million people in the world who have communicative barriers, whether they're autistic or whether there's another type of difference that causes it, to have an alternative way to communicate with your hands, to communicate with signals, to communicate with your body. And to have that interpreted by, of course, an AI. And we started that 8 years before anybody heard of ChatGPT. We were, we're from a general
time.
But to see if we could create a machine that could interpret these physical motions of our bodies into the words that we probably want to speak but are unable to, thereby creating a new way for families where neurodivergence is a big thing, or another communicative barriers, because it's wider, to have an alternative way to be able to communicate with their nonverbal family member in a way that that person also feels natural in communicating, and that they feel more included and more understood and more heard. And we found that the way to do it was to do something incredibly difficult that has never attempted before. And that is to combine the concept of personal sign language, your own movements and what they mean, and to combine that with existing sign languages, so that people can curate their own family language as a set of 200 signs that people could make towards each other to indicate what needs to be understood. So it's very clear. We call it sometimes survival language. Things that you need to express in order to move forward with your family, or what the others need to understand. And it is the great hope of the foundation that we will put forth this project and support millions with it. Wow. And ideally also in a nonprofit sense of the word, because we believe that speech should be a democratic right for everybody. And if the technology doesn't exist to make that happen, then so we must create that, because it's our role as humans to make this world better for the next generations to come, and for people like and unlike us. So that was the second very large mission of the Neurodiversity Foundation. And the third one is related to how neurodivergent people feel about themselves. And many of us, we have a difficult time the first 20 years of our life where we discover that we're different than most, struggling with the stigma, stereotypes, discrimination, stuff like that. It hurts us. It does. And I see those wounds in so many neurodivergent people all around me. And so we decided to create a day of celebration, a positive day where neurodivergent people would, allow themselves the permission to look at themselves in a positive light, to see what beauty they bring to the world, and to also openly declare, hey, I'm neurologically different, but that's okay. I'm happy with that. And this is who I am. And I refuse to hide parts of my identity because the world is not ready for it yet. And it started out small. The first celebration was at one floor of the Rotterdam Science Tower with less than 100 people. But the idea caught on very quickly and like fire. So in the next year, we were in 4 cities. And in the year after, we got calls from all around the world for people that heard of this new initiative and wanted to join in. And we were completely unprepared for that. But we did have a 10-year plan. So we thought to move forward our milestones and start to organize internationally. And every year, the Neurodiversity Pride has been growing about 3 to 4-fold. And this year, we were actively celebrating in 4 cities in the Netherlands and 15 countries around the world. And we've been working very hard with our beautiful team of ambassadors and volunteers and team members and board members and everybody who feels the same way that we do, our partners internationally. And as it seems now, in 50 countries in the world, the Neurodiversity Pride flag will be hoisted on June 16. And in even more countries around the world, there will be activities, whether they're small or big, this is not what matters, but that every country has a place where they can celebrate their differentness, that they can meet each other, that they can have, a bit of fun too, because it's such a joy to meet each other and to be open about who you are and to accept each other in solidarity and acceptance. So we're incredibly proud of that. We want to be the first Pride movement in space, and we've been having these conversations with certain space agencies.
Oh my goodness.
This was the third mission of the foundation, to boost the self-confidence and the strength of neurodivergent individuals. We needed to have a day, one day in the year, which was all about positivity, not about victimhood, which was all about looking at the neurodivergent strengths that we have, at the things that we add, the value that we bring, the beauty that we are, especially for being the persons that we already are and always have been. And this day is now a beacon around the world for people to assemble around national teams, to also start this conversation, because in 50 countries, that's a lot of places.
Yeah.
A lot of places out there which are still starting the conversation of neuro-inclusion, starting the understanding of neurodiversity. But as we've seen many societies change in how they perceive this topic, this is what we wish for everybody out there in the world. So we will continue working through blood and through love to make sure that in every country in the world, this day will be celebrated, and that neurodivergent people have a day to celebrate themselves. And it is our aim, and it has been our plan, to go to United Nations to request upon them to be added to the world calendar, because where other days have a days of observance, we think that neurodivergent people deserve that too, that one day in the year. And the larger it grows, the more countries we hope that will say yes when we would deliver the proposal. And until that time, 2025 will be the 8th edition. It's going to be one of the most beautiful ones. So those are the 3 main missions that started the foundation, that were the core reasons of why we felt that something new had to be done, and that it was not up to the others to solve the problems that we face, but that we have to unite as a group of neurodivergent people, not just in the Netherlands, but all around the world, to create a new type of nonprofit led by us and for us, that will advocate on our behalf on the things that really matter. And that is how the Neurodiversity Foundation was born.
Wow, what an incredible start, Tjerk. Thanks so much for sharing your personal motivation and all those aims. I mean, as you've been talking, I've also been reflecting on some characteristics that do typically get associated with neurodivergent autistic people. One is certainly not being put off by enormously ambitious big goals and just daring to tackle these big goals. You've given us so many examples there. But I think also woven through what you've been talking about is a really fair-minded approach, which is also a characteristic typically associated with autistic people, right? Fair-minded, everybody being able to participate, contribute, everybody being able to be seen for who they are, but also a very sensitive approach, which is, I think, almost never thought of when people think of an autistic mind, that people are very sensitive to the emotions and feelings of others. So I mean, I think you showcase those fantastically.
Well, actually, I would say that is a bit of a misconception sometimes, and it's in the past, let's say 10 years ago, there are still stories about autistic people having less empathy, but new research kind of shows that lots of autistics, and we're all different in our own way, and that's absolutely fine, but lots of us are actually hyper empathic, where we really tune into a person, we really understand every feeling and emotion that is happening in the group, but that it's when there are things that really make it difficult for us to perceive, for example, me with the background noise, that will limit your capacity for empathy. So when I look, and we have about 150 people who've been working at the foundation in the last years, many of them autistic, that in fact, I look upon them to feel the emotions of others, to understand them. And so I do not completely believe that autistics are less sensitive. I would
no. I think it's really a misconception. I see it also here at home. My autistic son is very sensitive to, especially my moods. And I think I'm doing a good job of concealing them and trying to be very even in how I come across. And not react emotionally, but he always seems to sense it. He always picks up on it. It's remarkable, actually. I'd like to ask you a question about how neurodiversity is perceived globally. I think you're in a really good position to answer this, as so few people are. I mean, you've talked about how much more aware people are becoming in the Netherlands and globally, but are you seeing differences in how people respond to the idea of neurodiversity in different cultures in the world?
Well, we've recently opened up a vacancy for roles in the foundation. We are growing quickly, and we needed highly capable, beautiful people to support us and to become part of our team. And we had over, a little bit less than 300 applications for completely unpaid roles, which is absolutely beautiful.
My goodness.
And 70% of those applications were from all around the world. So 30%, almost 100, were from the Netherlands, but most actually were from countries all around the world that either see our works or want to start something similar. And in the Netherlands, this topic is growing quickly, especially since Corona. And also what we see now is that there's new foundations starting too with this new type of mindset. That's absolutely beautiful, and everybody's welcome. And also that many individual professionals or bureaus are changing their approach to their services. For example, an autism coach will now try to school themselves into becoming a neurodiversity coach. And you do need lessons for that, people. You cannot just add that to your name. And I sometimes feel that what is happening here in the Netherlands is just a precursor of what is happening in many other countries, and that we are a little bit behind the UK, so to say, even when you look at that in that field. But just in the Netherlands, but also in other countries, there is an enormous gap. While the interest is growing, while neurodivergent people are coming together and becoming stronger, there's an enormous gap in society in particularly how people who are identifying as disabled are treated, and how little care or how little accommodation is for most of them available, especially when they're adults. And there's so much that needs to be done. And especially also if we look at the workplace, where there's, I think, a recent research that came out, I think 3 weeks ago, said that 41% of people who apply, who mention somewhere in their letter that they're disabled, they're automatically deselected for any next round or conversation. That just kind of shows how we're missing the point and how much work needs to be done. And that is not just a company culture thing, and it's not just a recruiter a thing that could change. That is like the cornerstone also of politics as we see it. So it's growing very quickly, this topic, and also the amount of people that are joining this. And we also see that in other countries, that so many countries are kind of starting up their own conversations there, often in their local language, and often with, difficult to translate words, because the word neurodivergent is an English word that doesn't translate well to any other language.
Okay.
But it's very hopeful. And for those who feel like they are starting in their own nation, who are watching this, please proceed and please continue, because it takes courage, and yes, we know. And it takes a lot of heart and a lot of extra energy, and often it's terribly underpaid. But the work that you're doing is important, and the work that you're doing also leads way to other people to follow your initiative or to follow your ideas. And this is what the world needs, that those who have a better idea decide that they will put themselves in front of the pack in order for others to be able to follow the ideas that they are seeking for. And well, recently we had a politician who loves tan being elected, and we have a lot of friends in the USA now who are very worried about it, who are worried about the destruction of DNI, who are worried about the destruction of disability rights, who are worried about the negativity that is just rampant out there. And yeah, that's an enormous setback for a country that used to do well, that was moving forward, and now is going back so quickly. But we also believe that, speaking to a lot of advocates there in the USA, that many of them are rebelliously and staunchly confirmed in their beliefs and willing to proceed regardless of how much setback or how much negativity they will get from a government. And that is something beautiful with neurodiversity that I see everywhere around the world. There's a lot of courage in there. There's a lot of willingness in there to be the person who says the difficult thing, but the important thing that needs to be said. And we applaud all of every person doing so and still proceeding, even if there's negativity coming your way. And it's good to know it doesn't just happen in one country, it happens in many. And also there are many good neurodiversity advocates in many countries. And together we will proceed, even if it takes a little bit longer or it takes a little bit more love or energy.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to go back to that statistic you shared, that 41% of people who mention that they're disabled in some way in applications are automatically disqualified from any further rounds, and turn the focus a bit to our workplaces and what we can all do to make our workplaces more welcoming and more enabling for really talented people who just happen to be neurodivergent. You talked there about political aspects to discouraging disabled people from applying for jobs, but I mean, my experience is also a personal aspect. So I know a lot of recruiting managers are worried about getting it wrong, saying something wrong, doing something wrong. Maybe they'll be subject to some legal action, but just day to day they will be looked at badly, or somebody will lose their temper, or they worry about a negative response because they do something wrong. Is there a misconception that you can correct for those people who might like to have a go at being more inclusive of their neurodivergent colleagues, but are scared to try?
Well, fear is an emotion that strangles us all in different ways. So if you are a recruiter and you're afraid to do it wrong, that's absolutely fine. It means probably that you care about the opinions of the impact that you have. It probably means that you want to do your job well. The wrong answer is to go into a corner, not say anything, and do nothing in fear of doing something wrong. The better approach is to teach yourself. It's not hard to learn these things. And there are so many great neurodiversity advocates around there creating beautiful articles explaining every detail that you need to have. There are so many neurodiversity advocates that are creating services to train you or to give you workshops or to guide you towards the right way. And there are many organizations that are emailing us and asking us, hey, can you have a look at this? Is this the right type of language? Or is this a negative focused type of language? And that's okay, because we're all learning, but it starts by wanting to know. And it starts by, as a recruiter, wanting to do better yourself, because if you won't, and if you are a type of recruiter that automatically deselects 41% based upon that, then maybe that's not the type of job you should have. Maybe you should be better at your job, and it's okay to accept that. So to learn more about neurodiversity, about different neurodivergent types, what they need, it really helps you in becoming a better recruiter that won't misjudge somebody. For example, an autistic person that doesn't necessarily look you in the eye during a conversation, that is not disinterest, that is them focusing. So you understanding it also makes your understanding of humanity more complete and more whole, and that would make you better too. And I think it is a sign of respect to read up on people, not just for psychologists, for all of us, especially those you understand the least, because when you understand the ones you understand least a little bit more, you also understand a lot more about yourself and about what other people feel in situations like that. And in that way, you can become an ally of everyone, not just of those who look most like you, not just of those who speak exactly like you, but an ally of everyone that is perhaps even more capable to do that job than the person who looks most like you. Yeah, and that is a calling, and that is for recruiters who take their job serious and who see it as a passion and not as a payment slip. And it's possible. And if organizations will will train their recruiters, I have one more thing to add, and that is be mindful to recruit neurodivergent individuals to train. There's so many good neurodivergent people training, doing services, and they often also really need the work to get paid. So to ask ChatGPT to do it, that's just not going to really help, but also it's not going to allow you to understand the nuances of this very complicated tapestry that we're in, and this context.
Yeah. And unfortunately, ChatGPT is biased because it's trained on biased training sets in the beginning.
Yes.
So it's not going to solve the problem for us. Yeah, all good advice, and it's great to hear that so many organisations are contacting you for advice and are open to changing their recruiting policies and their promotion policies and so on to be much more inclusive of neurodivergent people. But I also know, again, from my own experience and from the experience of a lot of people that I connect with, that there are many organisations who don't have neurodiversity inclusion on their priority list. And I feel that, unfortunately, the organisations that are coming to you are still exceptions, very forward-looking exceptions, in my opinion, but exceptions. And they're usually leading the way in innovation and being very resilient. But my question is, for organisations who are not looking at this, like, can you convince them why they should take a look and consider making neurodiversity a priority for themselves?
Yeah, and about what you said earlier, I think it's a research by Nancy Doyle that stated that about 90% of larger companies have a D&I policy, but only 21% include in that policy neurodiversity too.
Yeah.
So there's a really big gap, so to
Huge.
say, and it is very much overlooked. So it's a new topic, and that is okay, and that just means that we need to, throw our bells up a little bit louder to be heard. And wait, can you rephrase your question, please?
Yeah, if you needed to convince an organization to, let's say, put neurodiversity on their D&I map, whereas it wasn't before, how would you convince them?
Well, it is because we live in a new world now. Like in the past, we had General Ford who created the, like the assembly line, so to say. So every individual worker could be trained to just do that one little thing, and that is it. So 5 minutes of training, and it's done. But we live in a new world where the work that is done is mostly done in the minds and in the choice of how we use our energy. And if you assemble a group that are all extremely similar in the way that they think, the cultural experiences that they have, and so on and so on, it is very likely that the answer you will get from that group of a very complex question is the average of that group. And that is not the best answer. It's only an acceptable answer for a person in that group. But the world is larger, and the world has many different ways of thinking. And the interesting thing is when you combine people that think and experience the world in very different ways, so neurotypical and neurodivergence alike, then you will get a much more complete answer to what is the best answer to the question that you have. And it will make for better decisions, but also that different viewpoints are taken into account, which would be otherwise missed. So there's a lot less mistakes happening too. And there's something interesting in the biological world as well, which I see in the corporate world as well, which is if biodiversity is rising, then the vitality of a particular nature area is rising too. It's more resilient, and if something bad happens, like I don't know, like a terrible nature disaster or something like this,
Mm-hmm.
that area will be much more resilient to regrow itself and to utilize the inner strength that they have of the collective of all the organisms into, like the new way how they're moving forward as that space. So the same goes for organizations. If everybody is exactly the same, if everybody looks the same and thinks the same, it only takes one disaster for that organization to be squashed away by the disaster itself. But if you have all different kinds of people then contributing to thinking of the solution, then it is very unlikely that you'll be washed away by the disasters that can come at hand. And another thing is neurodivergent people overall, and of course we're all different, but if we take an average, we are very excited to get to work. We love to do so. And also often, since we get a lot less chances, we are much more motivated, and also we are much more likely to stay if that company feels like a safe company where we can do our work without negativity flying around us. So you have an enormous pool of, let's say, this 41% of people who really want to, who should be your top candidates, who really are capable as well. And then that part that they need accommodations with, that is possible too, and it's not expensive. And it's also, it doesn't take learning thousands of pages before knowing what to do or how to make it better. So it's really possible. So you're doing yourself a complete disservice as a recruiter, as an organization, to not include everybody in the box of opportunity and not see everybody as a possibly viable candidate for any role. And selecting people for their merits is much more powerful than deselecting people for what you see as maybe a barrier to performance. And you also see that those who are selected for their merit, they'll be happy and they'll be proud of their work, and they are also likely to, want other great people from the network to join the organization too, and to talk about it and so on. So also on the PR and recruitment level, there's so many positive factors there. And the thing that you want as a recruiter is to have the best, whatever that means. And the best is not limited to the 59% of people, to those 59%. The best is part of the 100%. And we need to discontinue blinding ourselves with characteristics like being disabled, to not see the quality that a person can bring, not the brain powers that that person can bring. And I've noticed in our projects, and we have about 25, that it really works wonderfully to have different neurotypes work together with each other, because we complete each other in a way, or we make each other whole in a way.
Yep.
And that is both much more interesting for the person at play, but also the outcome of each project is better. It goes further, it's stronger. And that is what you would like to be as a recruiter, a person who selects the best, not a person who selects the one who looks most like you.
I hope so. Thanks. I found it very persuasive. I hope other people listening do as well.
Well, if the college consulting industry is going to hire new people, then please take this on board too.
Absolutely. Now, when we talk about all of these things that we can do about organizations hiring from the 100% and not from the 59%. I forgot my maths there for a moment. And so on, it's all change, right? And we know change can feel very overwhelming for people. But the key is to take that first small step, right? As you must know from starting this foundation and from launching this wonderful thing that is now Neurodiversity Pride Day, and all of these massive things that you're tackling. So if someone listening is thinking, what can I do today to improve the opportunities for neurodivergent people, whether that's in my personal life or whether that's in my work life, what small step would you recommend that they take?
Well, I would select two. I can do it. But let's only go for two. The first one is the enormous power of being gentle, the power of being elegant in how you treat other people, and the power to be curious. Because those three, they lead to compassion, they lead to a deeper understanding of a person. And everybody here and everybody who looks to, we live in such a busy world with so many notifications and stimuli and our attention being drawn to so many different places. And I get it. It's difficult to focus on a person, to give that person your full attention in a way. And it's not going to be easier. But isn't that what you would like to receive from people talking with you? And if that is the case, is that something you can provide for the other, to really be there with that person, to be curious about that person, to see that person as an individual rather than the categorizations that we create in our mind to make all this complex information everywhere, to make that easier. Because, that's how discrimination and stigma is built. We just want to make our brains, we want to use our brains less, and then this is the easier gateway to do it. So to be genuinely curious to the other person, I think that has a very strong healing power. And you can do it with everyone, but you can definitely do it with neurodivergent people, and especially those that are favorite of you too, because we all deserve to be understood, and we all deserve to be heard in some way, shape, or form, even when our opinions don't really matter. And what you would like to have for the other, you could be that person. You could be that hero that the other person needs. Yeah. And it doesn't have to take a lot. And the second thing, obviously, June 16, the largest non-profit organized celebration of neurodiversity in the world. And if you're neurodivergent yourself, then I would invite you to take that day to take a moment for yourself, whether it's a minute or an hour, to just really reflect on how your differentness makes this world a more beautiful place. And I understand that for some of us, it is a difficult point to get there, to give ourselves these compliments, to look at ourselves more positively, especially when we had a traumatic past. But to have this day where this is the action that we do, it heals us. And also it strengthens our community. And if you're not neurodivergent, but if you're an ally or a family member or a coworker, you can also use this day to celebrate the neurodivergent people around you, to give them compliments, to secretly support them in whatever way, shape, or form to make that day fun for them. And if you're in an organization, to create some kind of event or activity where the neurodivergent people in your team are celebrated. And if you do, have it created by neurodivergent people, because nothing about us without us, of course. So these are the two things: a deeper attention for every individual that is in front of you, and a willingness to join the celebrations of Neurodiversity Pride in whatever way that works for you, because in Neurodiversity Pride, you celebrate the day in your own way.
See, anybody who's listening and is doubting they can do anything, it's not so difficult. There you go. 2 easy steps, you can get started. No excuse at all. And if anybody wants to learn more about the Neurodiversity Foundation or wants to support it, can you tell people what they should do?
So we have about 10 social media channels with about 100,000 followers in total. But usually the easiest way is to go to our website at neurodiversiteit.nl or neurodiversitypride.com. And also, I told you about the 3 missions that we had that we started the organization with, but the 4th one is education, because we found out that if teachers understand how they should treat their neurodivergent students, then they will have a much bigger chance to thrive in life later on and have less trauma and so on. So we created a Neurodiversity Education Academy. And if you type in neurodiversityeducationacademy.org, you will find a website with lots of articles, courses, apps with a learning community with, I think, 1,400 educators now. And, you know, last year we did 17,000 free courses for people. So there's stuff out there, right? And we are here to the degree that we can, provide it for free for as many people as we're able to. So come and take our stuff and use it. That's what we want, and that's what the mission is for. So these are the 3 websites we can easily be found.
Great. And that's an order, right? Come and find the stuff and use
it.
That's an order.
Go get it and use it if it serves you. Yes.
Tjerk, let's wrap it up here. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. I found it a really, once again, a really rich and enjoyable learning experience. I always learn something whenever I look at your stuff or talk to you. Thanks for supporting Podcasthon and for letting Podcasthon support you and the Neurodiversity Foundation. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your time today.